Well, I'm excited to be here at Bett MEA once again, and I'm really pleased by the conversations that have been had this morning, really focusing on the human part of the journey. And I'm representing a technology company for sure, but one of the things I can share is the knowledge that this is a people journey, and it's about not only helping our students, but helping all of us think differently. I want to start the narrative on mindset. And mindset is an incredibly important thing. It's important for all of us. Our last presenter gave you a perspective on shifting the mindset of the role of teachers being diminished somehow by the presence of technology. I can assure you, in all the world of work that I've done, with all the schools and countries that I've traveled to and visited, this day, today, in this digital revolution, the role of education has never been more important to the economic viability of a country, more potential to drive change in and out of society. And certainly the role of a teacher has never been more vital in every society, not only because of the role education plays in economic potential and future, but the landscape of learning that's changed and widened. So it's important to embrace a growth mindset. We talk about this a lot at Microsoft, embracing a growth mindset, thinking differently about the common or status quo, embracing an optimistic, different perspective on how to think about problems, challenges, the realities that we face. And I want to talk about this growth mindset applied to the transformation that we are undergoing in education, the transformation that we're seeing in our schools and our classrooms. And oftentimes we see this transformation as somehow being at the risk of the status quo. Or sometimes we lament that we haven't changed fast enough. We often hear that countries across this region are too slow to embrace change, or teachers are fearful of the change that's happening inside their schools or classrooms. I would argue, using a growth mindset perspective on this transformation, that the transformation has already taken place. And this is not a transformation that is dependent on, frankly, any of us. And the three most important elements that any school system globally would hope to change have already changed. And hopefully that fills you with confidence and encouragement, because it makes the hard things easier. Now, the reality is the three things I'll start with. The first one is the mindset of students. Earlier was mentioned the connection between physical and digital in this digital revolution. This generation of students may be called phygital. And students who don't see the difference between the digital world or the physical world as closely as many of us do. Students come into their classrooms embracing both mindset. The way in which these students think about how they learn has also changed. Where they find information, how they communicate, collaborate, share ideas. It's changing the learning paradigm that our teachers are embracing and supporting. And lastly, and most assuredly, the workplace that we're preparing students for has changed, requiring different skills. And we've heard many times this morning about we're preparing students for jobs that haven't been created yet, needing skills that we don't know exist. That's really challenging in many cases for teachers today to understand and embrace. Sometimes what we have to do is recognize that what we need to do is fuel the passion in students to make the world a better place, to help their families, help their communities. That's changing. The workplace to do that has changed. The way in which students can think and act globally has created new ideas. So sometimes it's helpful to be very real and practical for students and teachers. So with these three things changed, what it should do is lift hope, and then the role of all of you as leaders can build on this change, not have to restart it, not have to model it in a school or a classroom, but pivot from it to learn how to drive different narratives and different conversations. At Microsoft, we're releasing a study that we've taken from all over the world with countries and school leaders on looking at the dynamics of the class of 2030. This is the class of students who are just starting their education, will enter the workplace around 2030. And how do we think about preparing them? How do we help them not automate their world? They don't even see that as a necessary element. They want to personalize how they can make a more meaningful connection, how they can use their learning as fuel for the work that they want to do in the world. And that purposefulness is absolutely part of what we need to do in every classroom. Are we connecting students to answer the question of why they're learning, what they're learning, and what are they going to do with it? And if we can answer those three questions, we have a huge opportunity to shift not only the opportunities for students, but the potential outcomes that we can drive in our school systems. And this is really where we've got to drive. Because the question that I get asked most often in all my travels around the world is, does technology improve learning outcomes? And we often use this question to articulate, did we buy the right thing? Should we take out budget to invest in technology? Increasingly, this conversation is going to shift. It's going to be far less about technology. Technology is a given in our classrooms, in our society, the way in which we learn, the workplace we're preparing for. But it's going to shift in terms of how are we doing the best to maximize the potential for our students? How are we driving learning outcomes? And whether technology is necessary or not, the journey we are going to be is going to be in service of that potential. And that's really where I want to start the narrative. Now, as we think about this digital revolution, there are three main elements that are going to change. As the class of 2030 enter the workforce, they're going to see a world that is going to be vastly different because of these three technology elements: mixed reality, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing. In many ways, we're living in a paradigm-shifting era in these three elements. Now, when we think about mixed reality to start, we often think about virtual reality headsets or maybe augmented reality environments. I would argue that the landscape is going to get much broader in terms of thinking about wearable technology, assistive technology that we use in all of the experiences in our daily lives, becoming more natural, becoming more human as it relates to what we do. And we've got to embrace the spectrum between the physical world that we live in and how it's supported with digital tools. In many cases, this is very obvious when we're doing one or the other today. And over time, the spectrum between digital and physical reality will be mixed. It'll be mixed with a fusion of technology support, devices, tools to help us live easier, better lives, create more immersive connection to the world around us. And we're going to embrace this mixed reality spectrum with tools, technologies to enhance learning in the classroom. And when we do, we see early signs of this happening: improvement in student retention, improvement in the quality of outcomes, just by embracing new technologies in the learning environment. And we're just in the very, very beginning of this journey forward. So I'm excited about the work. I'm excited about the work that's happening in the region, embracing virtual reality and augmented reality tools in classrooms. But this is going to change vastly. And we're going to also need students to fuel this work going forward, as I'll talk about in a bit. Now let's shift a little bit to artificial intelligence. And I love the fact that we're talking about ethics and how we're managing and supporting artificial intelligence. This is critical. But we also know that the reality of artificial intelligence is often feared because of displacement of jobs. In many ways, I think what we've got to do is start to embrace that this is going to create new potentials for existing jobs. Potential to help students get a better learning outcome by providing teachers with tools to assist their journey. And I want to talk a little bit about the role data will play in driving this journey. And many of you are on a data journey. Whether you are articulating it or building technology tools, all of our schools globally are really in one of four stages of a data journey that will take place. The first one is the data collection phase. And whether you're not using a computer in a classroom, you're collecting data. Some of it may be on paper. Some of it may be in the minds of educators, their understanding of students' talent, what drives them, what motivates them. And so what we've got to do is to collect the data and collect as much as we can about not only the student's grades or tests, but what motivates and inspires a student to pursue their best path. The challenge, though, with collection of data, it becomes quickly overwhelming to educators. There's too much of it. I don't know what to do. I can't even see it from platform to platform. So many schools work to a journey to display the data, providing charts and graphs, maybe with red, yellow, or green lights to indicate progress, to make the data more transparent and easier to articulate. The challenge with this part, though, is that it's often viewing what happened in the past. Educators want to drive future outcomes in students. So we move to a predictive phase where we're going to drive insight of what may happen and where that journey will go and take us. But I would argue that the most important phase, and really the phase that will live in most of the life of education, is one where outcomes is what's important. And the word data won't even be used, because data will fuel activities and experiences and connections dynamically. And to do this well, we'll use the presence of artificial intelligence. And I'll just start with a simple example. We have two students here in this picture. Let's ask ourselves which one is at greater risk. So let's assume that a school has collected lots of data insight on students, and this school is very advanced. As opposed to just taking tests and grades on subjects, it started to understand students' resilience, their socialization, their optimism across the spectrum. And I've got student A and student B here, and they perform differently in various categories. So teachers, armed with this data, need to make decisions on what happens. And this is not easy to do. Now, what's going to happen, though, is this journey will be supported by three pivotal technologies that exist today. The rise of data and large machine data, both supported inside schools and beyond, the presence of the cloud to manage and connect this data, and the emergence of machine learning algorithms to make sense of the data proactively and predictively. And I'm going to give you just a quick example to share this in the real world. This is an example from the Snow Leopard Trust. Microsoft has been working with the Snow Leopard Trust on using our Azure cloud tools and artificial intelligence to help scientists who are researching and supporting the preservation of snow leopards, who are largely found in Central Asia, a population of about 5,000 snow leopards on the planet. And these researchers historically would take cameras and set up trap cameras across their area, collecting hundreds of thousands of photographs that would largely have to be manually sorted and identified. With the presence of artificial intelligence, what's happening now is when a snow leopard walks up to the camera is flashing many, many photos at once, understanding the patterns, the gait of a snow leopard, and identifying the animal. And we can see snow leopards in various cases. Sometimes we get a nice close-up selfie like this. Sometimes we've got an evening shot. But because of the presence of artificial intelligence and understanding what to look for and learning as it collects more information about snow leopards, it's getting more incisive about taking examples of the snow leopards. In some cases, we get a photo that isn't a snow leopard. So artificial intelligence is able to identify what's a snow leopard and what's not a snow leopard. In some cases, the data is cloudy. And by the way, when I share this language, think of this as a metaphor for your existing students, the way in which we collect data on students. Sometimes it's very clear. A student will fail a test or pass a test, but often the data is cloudy. We're actually missing what's really behind the performance. In some cases, we have an example that may not be easy to spot. So can many of you spot a snow leopard here? There it is right in the bottom. Just made it into the picture. Some cases, we have an image that maybe we thought would be a snow leopard, but it's completely different. In this case, an otter. Sometimes we've got a great image of the data. In many cases, we've got to find it. Can anyone spot a snow leopard here? Right there. This is a find the snow leopard game going forward. So here we've got one right there. This one's staring right at us. Great shot. Now we collect this data. Scientists are able to instantly identify the right photos to focus on. And you can imagine this over many, many thousands and hundreds of thousands of images. This has helped support their research and understanding better about the snow leopard community. Now, imagine this data input coming from schools. Artificial intelligence can help us not just provide insight and clarity, but augment the work that we need to do as educators. And if I go back to this example I shared before, most teachers aren't dealing with just 2 students. They're dealing with classrooms of students, schools of students, maybe regions. Data becomes very, very challenging for schools to leverage. Technology is not going to change. It's not going to remove the value of an educator. It's going to enhance their role to provide the right insight and investment to students to drive outcomes that we need. And that's a mindset shift that we need to embrace, because data is only valuable unless we harness it to drive results. It's important to collect data, sure, be safe in how we manage it, but we've got to make data responsible for driving action. And artificial intelligence can help us with that for sure. It can help us make connections between the data, some of them which we may have seen, others which we may not recognize. And this journey is going to be important as we go forward. Now, AI can certainly help with learning outcomes. It can also help us in a far broad spectrum. One of the examples is one of the things you're seeing right now. Hopefully it's working okay. That's the translation services that I'm using. This is not prepared by our awesome speech translators that are in the booth. This is actually happening just with machine learning inside of PowerPoint. So I'm using Microsoft PowerPoint and translating, and many of you saw the QR code on the start of the presentation. All of you can be seeing translation in over 60 languages on your cell phone as I present. If you'd like to see the translation in Arabic, you can join the room using the code that's on the top of the screen, and it will translate into your language. And we can have classrooms of students doing the same thing. Using machine learning, we're able to do speech translation on the fly. And this is kind of an assistive tool that we can do. And we've been taking this journey and thinking about AI at Microsoft broadly. So I'm going to share an example from Microsoft researchers who work on the SwiftKey keyboard. Many of you use on your mobile phones. This is the world's most advanced keyboard for identifying speech and anticipating what you're going to type next. And that team has thought about how do we embrace this technology to help students with autism learn more effectively, communicate more easily. And let's share a little bit look at some of the powers of AI to make a difference.
SwiftKey Symbols is a communication app for people who are non-verbal, and it supports them in expressing themselves.
Rowan, my youngest brother, has low-functioning autism. He finds it difficult to communicate and can get very upset if he can't make himself understood. I took what we used at home with some symbols that my mum would print out, laminate, cut out, stick Velcro on, put them into folders, and I just thought I could make that easier. If we did it on an app, then more fun for Rowan because he loves technology.
The underlying AI technology which SwiftKey Symbols uses is the same technology which powers the SwiftKey keyboard. So we use AI technology to be able to learn from the user's behavior to see what they like to use in terms of their own style of language to predict what's going to come next.
It works by having a library of symbols that you can pick and choose to build your sentence, and each symbol has a word associated with it. And we use SwiftKey AI predictive technology to learn what you've used previously, sentences that you've previously built, and then we surface what word you might want next and what symbol you might want next to build your sentence.
I want juice, please, Kate.
Wow! We developed it alongside Riverside School, which is a school specialising in learning difficulties.
To be able to express what they want without prompting is a really big thing.
Go on then, ready? I want cow.
We have so many pupils who are non-verbal but still have so much to say.
I think AI can just make everything in life more efficient so you can enjoy life to the max.
There's no better feeling than to hear a child say something that they've wanted to say and the look on their face after they've been able to say it. You can't really beat that because that's them expressing themselves and that's really what you want from them.
It's joyous. I don't think I can think of a better word for it. It's complete joy and celebration.
And that's the potential that we have. And that's one of the reasons why I like to use the term augmented intelligence versus artificial intelligence, because there's really nothing artificial about the kind of joy and connection that being able to communicate opens up. We're also thinking about this work to do something very, very fundamental in this new world of work. And that is connecting students' skills, the skills that they're building, to jobs that exist in the workplace. And this is an important and necessary element, and certainly in our changing classrooms, motivating with students with purpose, it's necessary. Microsoft's recent acquisition of LinkedIn is opening up a potential to integrate the Microsoft Graph, which is the foundation for how we power our AI services across our productivity platforms, with the economic graph of LinkedIn. So there's over 500 million profiles in LinkedIn. All of them have academic journeys, employment journeys, dialogues that people use to describe themselves, and even the endorsements that they get from other individuals and how they describe the skills and the experiences that they've had. We're taking that information and actually connecting it to not only the Microsoft Graph, but the curriculum, content, and journey students are on in classrooms. There's a pilot that we have going on currently in Andhra Pradesh in India to bring the connection between the economic graph and LinkedIn to the Microsoft Graph, powered with AI to help students in classrooms understand the skills they need to develop and connecting to the career paths. So if a student says they wanted to be a scientist or a veterinarian, what are the skills that are needed in those professions? What are the courses they should take? What are the connections that they should make to their curriculum? This is an important element that we're working on, and it's in production and prototype today, and we're learning from the work that we're doing in Andhra Pradesh, and I'm expecting that we'll be rolling this out broadly, globally in the near future. And it's an exciting part of the journey. Now, the last piece, and this is certainly the most exciting potential for our future, is the emergence of quantum computing. And quantum computing fundamentally has the opportunity to change everything about the landscape of technology today. The way in which we think about data and encryption and security certainly will change. But certainly the way in which we can use technology to solve problems that are difficult and impossible to solve today. Thinking about the way in which we can use technology to solve climate change, or help with food production, or help with medicine, and certainly the technology to create cures to diseases, but also to resistance to antibodies, is critically important. And it requires a new technology paradigm, a new computing paradigm to do this. And that's the emergence of the new quantum age that many of our students in class of 2030 will not only live in, but will need to fuel. So let's learn a little bit more about quantum computing and the impact it can have on all of us.
Houston, we see you. We have a go. Over.
When we talk about quantum computing, it's a completely different game.
Quantum computing will enable us to solve problems that currently take longer than the lifetime of the universe in seconds, hours, or days.
We completely reconceive the space in which we do computation.
Quantum computing is like going from crawling to going to a different planet. It's different.
It's only natural that we would want to use the world's most powerful device to combat the world's most challenging problems.
We could attack global warming.
Security.
What are the boundaries of machine learning
fighting diseases. The possibilities of quantum computers are endless. Microsoft has the best and the brightest working on this problem.
It's really happening. Progress is very fast. And we're building a quantum computer.
What the world wants to know is what happens when we turn the machine on.
What problems will be solvable with a computer that computes in a billion parallel universes at the same time?
So, mixed reality, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, these are three hugely important opportunities for technology, not only to change the face of education, but to fuel the education reality that exists today. And all of those elements create tremendous potential for our societies, for our economies, etc. But we've got to address the fundamental gap that we exist today with regards to the current technology environments that we're dealing with. There's a tremendous skills gap globally. And this is creating an opportunity across not only the region, but the world for countries to understand the connection between education and economic potential and reality. As I've said before at Bett MEA, we've moved from a world of work where people went to find jobs to a world where jobs find people. And that should be an amazing, uplifting element for all of your growth and focus on education, because you truly will change the society, the country, and certainly the economic future for sure. But we've got to address this gap. Now, when we look at the gap specifically with STEM, we largely have a technology gap. And the technology gap is growing. I think in 2015, only 12% of computer science graduates had access and experience with cloud, less with AI, less than 1% had any experience with quantum. Certainly things like data science and mixed reality, the focus on robotics, all of these are gaps inside an area that's already tremendously shortcome. So we have an opportunity to shift the language. But we do know, looking at data coming from LinkedIn and other sources, that the growth potential from every economic perspective is with technology and computing. And not only how are you fueling traditional compute jobs and technology jobs, but how is technology playing a role to enhance other industries? And that's where the gap is. So it's going to create a tremendous need and importance for our schools and our teachers to embrace technology, bringing the range of skills that are needed across the spectrum into classrooms today. And this is a reality that Microsoft is seeing and supporting with our efforts around the world, working through co.org and working through many, many initiatives, and certainly for Africa, driving a lot of work to help make technology real in the classrooms and the instruction of technology and computing more practical to experience for students and teachers. This is an important part of the journey because we're going to need these future leaders in all of your countries to change not only the opportunities to solve tough challenges, but to create the foundation for an economic future that fundamentally will be different than where we are today. Now, when we think about this, we have tools like Minecraft and Minecraft Education Edition to excite and inspire students to open up their thinking of a limitless reality that exists, and technology is creating a journey. But all of this starts with amazing teachers. And I'm sharing a picture, many of you may have seen this picture because it became very viral in social media, of Richard Apaya Koto. He's a teacher from Ghana who is doing what many, many teachers who often get unsung do every day. They're making the impossible possible. And in this context, Richard is taking a tool like Word and using a blackboard to teach students without technology how to use digital tools because he sees it as so important for the digital future students will be entering into the workplace. And his heroism is just an example of what's going on in the region here. It's going on across Africa and across the world where teachers are making this reality possible. And at Microsoft, we need to celebrate great teachers like Richard, support them through our efforts, One of the things I'm most excited about this week is we'll be training 1,200 teachers from the UAE here at this event on technology tools and skills and how to share that joy with their students. We also have a great cohort in the UAE of teacher interns. And this is a program Microsoft is excited to work on and lead with UAE to really understand the connection between teachers aligning to Microsoft programs and trainers to help make technology more meaningful, more powerful, and more easy to consume for students across the region. So I'm excited about this work, and we're learning from them as much as they're learning about how they can change their classrooms. Now, all this comes together with our education transformation framework. And we've worked globally building tools to think about this journey, the people version of the journey, thinking about how technology can be adequately and embraced across all these dimensions. Bringing leadership and policy, modern teaching and learning, thinking about our physical spaces. How do we shift curriculum? How do we create new incentives for students to learn? These are all elements that we're going to be part of the thinking that goes on. And as leaders, we've taken these tools and put real assets behind them. So you have white papers and materials to support you on the journey to build true transformation. To make it more meaningful, Microsoft is undergoing on a project called Microsoft Flagship Schools, where we're working in partnership with school leaders globally to start from the ground up, to build new schools with new expectations, new energy, optimization of physical spaces for safety and security, the collection and utilization of data, new design of learning environments. And we're learning from these experiences that will happen all around the world to create tools and experiences that we can share globally with all of you. And we're doing this also because we know we've got to learn along the way. Microsoft is also undergoing on our central campus and the headquarters where I work, a complete modernization of our experience for class of 2030. Our CFO basically said to our facilities team, build a campus for an 8th grade student. Build a campus that will connect to the mentalities and experiences that students demand when they go into the workplace. And that team of researchers and facility managers all be working in partnership with school leaders to think about how we're building a learning space inside Microsoft, but also working with learning spaces globally. So I'm excited about the journey we'll be on with Flagship Schools and working with all of the true leaders who are driving change around the world. And that's one of the reasons why I'm excited about the next few days. I'm excited to continue the journey with all of you. And thank you for your continued leadership, the vision you have for change, and shifting the mindset to see this journey not only as something that will reduce anyone's role, it will enhance our ability to help the world, helping each of our students, maximizing the work that they're going to do for their families, for their communities, for their country, and to solve some of the toughest challenges on the planet. Thanks for your continued leadership, and enjoy the rest of Bett.